Where you are now in your life, how does that compare to what your vision of your life was going to be when you were a kid?
And then I'll play minor league ball, and then eventually I'll make my way to the Dodgers. So that was like my, as if I'm planning a road trip. I'm going to stop at Buc-ee's, then we're going to go grab a bite at McDonald's, and then we're going to go this way.
I didn't want to do anything.
You were a pro cyclist. You don't get there by accident. What do you mean you had no vision, no goals? Come on.
What's up, everybody? All of our listeners in the world. This is the Midlife Crisisses podcast. We are all going through our own midlife crises, and we are here to answer our own questions about being halfway to death. I am one of your co-hosts, and I mean, I'm 45. I'm Tyson Apostol. You might recognize me from Survivor. If you don't, that's okay. They paid me the same, but you can still rewatch if you want to. And I am here with two very good friends. First, Bradley, why don't you introduce yourself?
That's right. I'm Bradley Hasemayer. I am an Emmy award-winning host. I'm a content creator, voted America's next greatest dad. I'm number 2. I'm going to let you figure out who number 1 is. I have 2 kids, 4 and 11. We are living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm just trying to have fun and make money doing it.
All right, William,
What's
about
up?
you?
I'm William Drumm. I'm Denver's most famous underwater photographer.
That's a hotbed for underwater photographers, right?
There's a lot of us here, but I'm fighting my way to the top every day. I'm also a single parent. I've got a 4-year-old daughter who's the best. I'm 39 years old and just figuring out what's next.
True.
Okay.
And you've got a question for us talking about figuring out for what we were like, who's going to come with a great question? Tyson said Bradley. I said, no, I don't have a great question. William has great questions.
Yeah,
he's
I do have a
Denver's
good question
number 1
for us
underwater
today.
photographer for scuba. Come on.
That's right. And
Yeah.
the question's not even about scuba, but it's fine.
All right.
So I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Where you are now in your life, how does that compare to what your vision of your life was going to be when you were a kid?
Bro, this is so hot. This is like, we don't want to come with questions that are mid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
This is so, the Riz in that question is so next level.
Oozing.
It's oozing Riz.
Yeah.
I love that question. I think
Good.
That's so good.
Who's going? You want me to go?
Yeah,
I can
Tyson,
go.
I think you can go. Go.
I will go. And I'm probably unique in my mindset of growing up. I didn't want to do anything. I liked playing sports. I liked having fun. I did not like
Nothing?
any.
No,
I had no
vision.
aspirations.
You were a pro cyclist. You don't get there by accident. What do you mean you had no vision, no goals? Come on.
I did that to avoid having vision or goals. I was like, I'm good enough at this. Like, I still have friends from pro cycling. This was my career of pro cycling was very short-lived, 3 or 4 years in Europe as a pro. And I still have friends that still ride their bike every day from back then, 15, 20 years ago. I don't do that. Riding a bike every day sucks, dude.
Yeah.
It sucks major balls. Like, I am not riding a bike every day anymore because that is just a grind. So I look back at my life, and you know how they go through like your elementary class and you're like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, I want to be like a professional. Now everybody wants to be an influencer or a content creator. So we're
Right.
living their dream.
Yeah.
But back then it was all pro athletes or musicians or actors or actresses, that type of thing, whatever fame and notoriety and tons of money. And then the one kid in the class would say like garbage man, and everybody would laugh because that was like I'm sorry to all of you waste management people. That's just what it was back then.
Yeah.
And now I remember saying back then, when they were like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said a millionaire. I wish I would have said billionaire because maybe things would be different. But
That's true. $1 million now is not what it was 40 years ago.
and I reached that goal. I won $1 million on Survivor. I did that. I don't know what my vision of how my adulthood was going to be. I don't think I had that foresight. I did not have that foresight. I can tell you right now, up until I had kids, I had no aspirations or visions of my future successes. All I knew was that things would probably work out and I'd live that day. And I did not live that far into the future. And I think that was a great way to live at the time for me personally. But like with kids, I couldn't do it. Now I have to have something. So yeah, it's weird. Like I look back and I'm like, I tried to go to college, because that's what you do after high school.
Right.
But I hated it. But I was on a swim scholarship. So I was a swimmer there getting school paid for. And then I decided I didn't want to swim anymore because that sucked. And like swimming circles for like 6 hours a day is the worst, dude. And then as soon as I quit swimming, I decided I'm only here at school because I was swimming. And now I can tell that with school, what they're trying to do is train me for a career that I don't want. It's a trick. It's all a trap. They're tricking me. Yeah, school is tricking me into getting a career to being part of the system, which, listen, I'm part of the system now. Like, I have no problem saying that you have to be part of the system to get paid, to take care of your family, and that's all well and good. But at the time, I felt like it was a trap, and I got out as quickly as I could. And I was like, what can I do that I can avoid? And that was pro cycling. So that's why that was there. But I had, no foresight into my future until I was probably 35.
I love like the blissful ignorance of it. It's like, what do you want to be? You mean for lunch? No, like, what do you want to be with your life? Like,
I guess I
want
wanted
a dinner. Like, there's just like, I don't know.
I guess I want to see Australia. And they're like, no, not. Yeah, no. But that's how it was.
But it does sound like you knew you wanted to make some money, and
I didn't care. Yeah, I wanted to make money, but I didn't want to work hard to make money. Yeah, and I didn't care about, like, my bank account.
You just wanted to survive.
0. Yeah, I would like get random jobs, mostly from my dad, who owns a construction company, to make enough money on the day to go out to dinner with my friends that night.
That's not even paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
There was no paycheck. That was just cash out of pocket. Like, help me clean up this site cash down the street. Yeah.
Yes.
Cash to stomach.
Yes. So I can go to Bombay House tonight with my friends.
Ooh, is that like a Chili's or like a TGI Fridays or something? What is Bombay
it's
House?
It's a delicious Indian restaurant in Utah. Ooh. It's one of the best Indian restaurants I've ever been to in the world. And I am a big Indian food guy.
Oh, wow. That's good.
I've never been to India, though, so they might do it better over there. But New York, everywhere I've been, still better in Utah, which is crazy.
What about when you were younger? Did you want to be like seen by a lot of people? Was there anything about that when you were younger? Like, hey, I want to.
So the things I wanted to be, that way? I think the things I wanted to be were a stand-up comedian.
Sure, you see that,
and an illustrator, like a cartoon artist. And there was no pathway for that, though. Like, even my parents were like, you always said you want to be a stand-up comedian and an illustrator, and we did not help you at all. Yeah, we got nothing. There's no programs for you. We are sorry. Yeah. And like, you look now, you're like, oh, those guys that are my age that are stand-up comedians now, they just like ran away from home at 16 and moved to New York and did like stand up at the open
Comedy
mics
Cellar and all those places. Yeah.
And I was like, that's what the path would have been. Yeah. But I had no idea, and my parents didn't know. And even cycling, I took a pretty, like, I got very lucky in that I was physically gifted with a large amount of endurance. But the way I trained was totally incorrect. Like, I would have been a much better athlete had I been smarter about the way I trained.
Yeah.
So,
but you didn't care.
I didn't care. And I just was going day at a time. And like, on those rainy days when it was dumping rain and I was like, I don't want to train, I'd just be like, but guess what? I'm not in a cubicle at a job. And those people in the cubicle looking out the window at the rain, wishing that they could, at least feel the rain on their face, are jealous of me. And they're not. Like, now I watch cyclists and I'm like, fucking glad I'm not out there.
Be you. Well, what about with your kids? Like, do your kids, do they have a clear idea? Or are you just like, don't worry about it, guys, we'll figure it out? Or is there like a lot of stress over like, I want to be this and that? Because it's one thing to have never really felt that, but to also compare, like culture tells you you need to know what you want to be like at birth. Like, oh, she shook the rattle, she'll be a drummer. It's like, what?
Yeah, right now we're just like cultivating their interest. Like when they have interest, we try our best to figure out how to make it work for them. Like my daughter just like loves horses, so we had her in horse riding for a long time. And they're both very artsy, so we have a dedicated craft room that they can go in whenever they want and start. And they do. Like 5 a.m, you'll hear rattling around in the craft room, and you'll get up and if you're like, you're cutting stuff and gluing stuff and using permanent marker, and they're like, it's the only way it will work. I was like, have at it. You're the artist here.
This is your room.
Yeah. So my oldest wants to be a cowgirl, and I think an artist and an astronaut, maybe, I think are the 3.
Yeah. I love the multi-hyphenates.
Yeah, you can be a triple threat.
Yeah.
And that's the holy trinity of
right. It's such a cliche. Jobs. The astronaut, cow person, artist. The cliche triple threat.
It's right. And the younger one, I don't think has ever really stated what she wants. Maybe like really young, she wanted to be a ballerina, but she already quit ballet. So we have her in skateboarding now. Which is so cool. Like we didn't have skateboard lessons when I was a kid. Like that was way.
I know. When I see those on your Instagram, it looks so fun.
I know. I'm like, you know what? I was like, if you wanted to learn how to skateboard as a kid when you were my age, when you were our age, you had to go down to the scary guy on the corner without the shirt, smoking weeds, sitting on his skateboard, and ask him to teach you. And I did get lessons from that guy a couple times.
That's so great.
And he was just like, here's how you do it. And he was super nice. They were in our neighborhood, these teenage kids, and everyone thought they were punks. And I asked them if they would show me how to skateboard, and they did show me as best they could a couple times.
Yeah, it is nice to have a path like that for her. My neighbors behind my house when I was growing up, they had a little concrete half pipe. And every time I see those videos of your daughter going down with and then falling onto the pads, I did that same thing so many times, but just onto concrete, no pads. So exact same work, just right to the bottom of the half pipe, fall into the concrete, bottom of the half pipe, fall into the concrete. So that's nice.
Yeah, that's technology's gotten
kids these days so lucky.
Skateboard technology's really advanced. How about you, Bradley? What about your vision for your future when you were a child?
I was actually the antithesis of you from the standpoint of like, I was the guy who was like, I've got a 5-year plan. I've got a 10-year plan. I got a 15-year plan.
Wow.
I remember specifically in 7th grade, we had to lay that out. Like, what's your 6-month, 5-year, like 15-year goal? And I remember this sheet of paper that was like a tri-fold, A4 legal pad sheet of paper. And it was in these rows. And I had planned out I was going to be a pro baseball player.
Smart.
So for me, that was kind of the dream.
Because it makes a lot of money.
Well, for me,
you get to just stand around. It's fun hanging with the boys.
I think it was more like the prestige. I think there's always been a part of me that like wants to be popular and cool, and so I think there was a part of that. I think it was also like I get to play, like I love baseball. I get to play that. I didn't understand, I didn't comprehend money at 7th grade to know like salary or what you could do with that money. I think if baseball players made $60,000 a year, I still would have wanted to have been a baseball player. You know what I mean? That didn't come into it. But so I had that whole thing drafted out, and I was playing ball, but I also wasn't like, I worked hard. I got like a VHS. I was a catcher. So like I got this VHS from this guy who's like, here's the 3 ways to become a better catcher. I was like, number 1, frame the plate, kind of thing, like simple stuff like that. And I'd be in the basement, and I had a tennis ball hanging off of a string, and I was in there hitting and started trying to lift weights late in high school or late in middle school.
Yeah.
And then, trying, man. I was like, this is it. I'm going to play high school ball at Bearden, where I was going to go to high school. I was going to play for Auburn. I was going to go to college, University of Auburn.
Yep.
That's where my parents went. So I thought that's where I'll go. And then I'll play minor league ball.
6 months.
Birmingham Barons.
Yeah.
Which is the feeder team into the White Sox. And then eventually I'll make my way to the Dodgers. So that was like my I just like, that's how easy it is, as if I'm planning a road trip. I'm going to stop at Buc-ee's, then we're going to go grab a bite at McDonald's, and then we're going to go this way.
Well, the thing I think is most interesting here for you, Bradley, is that you like want notoriety. You wanted to be like, recognized, but then you choose catcher instead of pitcher.
I tried pitcher. I failed terribly at pitcher. And
Okay.
the thing about the catcher position that I loved was you're kind of the commander. You really are the QB of baseball because you're the one, you're calling the pitches. You have to know what's going on in between pitches, at least like in like little league and stuff. You're reminding people, okay, we got to force at second, cut off at center. Like you're kind of the coach out there. And that was always a little bit of who I was. So to some degree, I really liked it. And I've always been a gear person. So I loved that there was like a helmet and a mask and, the glove
Special
and the
glove.
chest plate and the leg things, all that stuff. So it actually kind of, I fell into it. I thought I'll be a shortstop. I'll be a pitcher. And then the coach was like, no, why don't you put on a bunch of gear and sit in the back and get pummeled by runners coming in trying to steal home? It's like, great.
Nice.
I got this, coach.
I was a pitcher in Pony League.
Oh, I could see that, man. You're tall, lean, long. Yeah,
And I'm
you
left-handed.
throw some heat.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
you're a
left-handed.
lefty. That's forget it.
Threw a no-hitter one point in my teenage career. But I remember getting the Roger Clemens tutorial baseball that had markings on
Yes.
the ball where you
Yep.
put your fingers to
Totally.
throw certain pitches.
Had
And I'm
the
going to
same.
tell you something. I threw every single fucking pitch the same. It didn't matter where I put my fingers on the ball. It was
Yeah.
Like I remember going to tryouts in high school or something, and the coach was like, "Let's see your curveball."
Yeah.
And I put my fingers where you're supposed to
Where
go.
Roger said.
Where Roger said, I put that spin on it. Ball did not break an inch. And he was like, "That looks about like your fastball." I was like, "Yeah, they're the same."
I call this one the curveball, but it looks just like a fastball. It confuses everyone.
Yeah. They'll think a curve is coming. It's not. It's still just a fastball, and it's not that fast. It's high school fast.
It's medium ball.
Yeah, it's not even high school fast. It's junior high fast, hoping to graduate to high school fast.
So I see why that was a short-lived career as well.
Yeah. Okay,
as
so
pitcher. So baseball was it, and I thought this is going to be my life. And then in high school, my freshman year, I didn't do all the, like you were talking about, your parents identifying, or you identifying things in your kids and trying to like what did you say? Kind of like help them cultivate.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a culture of cultivating when we were kids, right? That
No.
wasn't really a thing.
It was
and there
like,
wasn't
let's do what the
access.
parents want and
Yep.
what's easiest for the
My
parents.
dad
And
was an engineer. My mom's dad was an engineer. I'll probably be an engineer. It was very 1800s, like serfdom.
yeah,
It was
well,
like, this
and,
is just what we'll do.
and I still find myself doing that as a parent. Like, you kind of like it, but it's very difficult for us to get to every week.
Yeah.
We're going to not do it for a little
Probably
while.
not do that.
Yeah.
You're going to have to show me that you're really into it.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
And for me, 5th grade, in the midst of loving baseball, I did stand-up comedy for a talent show. And it did great. It was other jokes. I got a joke book and I did it and I loved it. And it was fun and it was great. And it was like, but there was no point in my parents' life where they were like, that's interesting. You're funny at home. You love being around people. You just did stand-up. What if we let you listen to some stand-up albums, or like something like, there was no thought of that. And there was no, and I don't fault them at all for it, because it was almost like being mad at someone, like growing up in a town where there was no Whole Foods, and being mad at your parents that you didn't have organic. It's like, well, it wasn't even available really where we were. And so that concept of like culture and cultivating that, it was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. So anyway, we're going to head back home now. We got to get you, it's bath time and bedtime. And there wasn't any thought of like, let's cultivate this. So baseball seemed like the best thing. That said, I wasn't on the traveling team. I wasn't on the year-round baseball like they have now. I wasn't, because both A, it was expensive. B, it was a huge time commitment. And C, I don't think I even necessarily had that drive. I never begged my parents for it. Whether I knew they weren't going to say yes or not, I don't know. I can't really go back to that. So anyway, long story short, 5th grade, I'm doing stand-up. I'm like, this was fun, but I'm still staying with baseball. My freshman year, I try out for the baseball team and I get cut. And that was I've had a very like blessed life in general, in terms of like that I can say that in high school, my freshman year, that was the most trauma I'd incurred.
Okay.
That I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, it brought up questions of like, if God is good, why would this happen? Right? Like, how could a good God say no to baseball?
You're atheist. You're atheist now?
No,
Completely
but it did
shattered your
challenge.
entire worldview.
It did, and it challenged me in ways that like I was like, wait, so what? You know, and my parents weren't like, let's really sit down and mull over this. It was just kind of like, oh, ouch, that hurt. Okay,
Yeah.
Welcome to high school. Welcome to the real world. You know, and you know, and so I was all of a sudden kind of like, okay, well, maybe baseball's it, but if it's not it, then what? And I didn't really know. But as I went along, I started like kind of a meandering path that like I was kind of, you know, the things that I liked kind of worked, and the things that I wasn't good at didn't. And so I kept kind of going down that lane. And so, you know, then it was, okay, so it's not, maybe it's not.
Was baseball over after that? Did you try out again? Did you?
So good question. I tried out my sophomore year and made the team, but I sat the bench most of the time because we had a big time catcher ahead of me. So I started a few games, but then I was kind of like, not into this. Like, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. We had one of those coaches too, who took it really seriously. Like, he was a former college coach, come down to high school. And, you know, and it was also like a lot of these players, you know, their mom was the head of booster club and dad was out raking the field and, you know, donating bases. And that just wasn't my style. That wasn't my family. And so it went away. And then football came. There was a football coach who was like, hey, you should try for football. And I was like, okay, I'll try that. I'd never played organized football before. And that was great. I loved that. And that was fun. So sports had always been in my life. But then, you know, college comes and I was like, okay, I'm clearly not doing that. And I was doing drama in school and I loved it. And people were like, you're great. And I even I should have this as my intro. I won a scholarship for $250 to a school of my choosing. It was the Drama Award Scholarship. So, you know, I was an award-winning drama kid too.
Wow. $250.
Yeah, exactly. That would buy you probably some great Indian food
pass
today.
for a
That's
week.
about it. Yeah, exactly. And so then I was like, oh, maybe there's something here, but that seemed stratospherically impossible. The idea of being an actor from a kid in Knoxville, Tennessee, who knows no one in the industry, and there was no access to that, was like, okay, so I enrolled pre-med. So I'm like, I'm going to be a doctor. Yeah. And then same kind of thing with baseball. My sophomore year, I failed organic chemistry and was like, wait a second. I tried my hardest. I thought I could do anything that I put my mind to, just like they told you on every after school special. And they were wrong because I tried and I wanted it and I failed. And so I was like, okay, I guess that's not it. So there's like all these pivots in my life. And so then it was like, I'm going to move, you know, eventually I get the idea of, I was like a PR major, journalism major, but I was like, you know what? Life's too short. I'm going to move to LA. I'm going to become an actor, or at least try. So I did that. And I moved to LA and I was doing stand-up and I was doing all these things. And then that didn't go the way I wanted it to. I mean, I did as many creative things as you could think, casting director workshops and work for free. And, you know, had a couple like book this, book that, did a couple commercials, did a Super Bowl commercial in one of those Doritos, make your own commercial kind of thing, which was great. And that was fun a bunch of years ago.
Yeah.
But then nothing. I mean, I even like crashed auditions and like all the stories you hear where it's like, I just got bold and like submitted my headshot to that one casting person. And they were like, well, we're done with the audition, but let's have you do it. And the next thing you know, I'm the lead of the show. Like, none of that happened for me. And I tried all of it. Even had someone, I was thinking about this the other day, even had one of my friends Photoshop me on an Entertainment Weekly cover using one of my headshots with like all the blurbs. It looked like a legit cover. I stuck it in with my headshot, resume, sent it out because at the time you had to do all hard copies. You know, so I'm like picking up shifts just to afford postage and printing it at Kinko's and cutting off the edges because, you know, the 8.5 by 11 paper doesn't fit the 8 by 10 photo. And, you know, so you have to cut the edges. And it was a whole thing. And none of that did anything from the standpoint of like, that's where I thought I would be. I was like, I'll move to LA. I'm 26. Easily by the time I'm 30, I'll have my own show, have a house, kids, wife, live in LA, all that kind of stuff. And none of that took. And so, you know, it was kind of like, it's a little bit of both of you guys from the standpoint of, I didn't know exactly what I wanted, but everything I was like, oh, I'm going to go this way. And then that door was like, boom. Okay, so let me try this thing. And boom, that closed, and boom, that closed. And so, you know, I think I talk to my wife about this all the time. She actually has a book coming out called Crushed. why is it the life you want doesn't want you back? So it's all about that idea of pivot, all the idea of like, I wanted to do this thing and ended up over here. And, you know, there's definitely a part of me that looks at like, I'm 44 and I'm not nearly where I thought I would be in my life. I'm behind the ball in terms of money. I'm behind the ball in terms of resume. I'm behind the ball in terms of so many aspects that I would think of in my life. On the other side of that, I love the flexibility of my life. I love that I get to be around my kids all the time. I'm healthy. Like there's so many things that I love about my life, but on just paper, I look at those things and I think that is not, if I go back to 16-year-old Bradley and I'm like, you know, you wanted to be these things and do these things and none of them worked out. I'm not where that guy wanted to be, but I'm also totally fine with where I am. I'm very content. And I think content has like a negative connotation in our society of like go hard and go strong and push more and like never let them see you sweat. But content is really a beautiful place of maybe I'm not exactly where I thought I wanted to be, but I'm also in a really great place. And that's okay because I don't know all the future. Maybe I would have turned out to be a real jerk if I'd gotten all the things that I wanted in the time that I wanted. I never maybe would have met Kirsten or had the kids I have or, you know, be able to drive the cars and travel and talk to you guys. Like all these kinds of things would not be the case. So yeah, I mean, I think the answer is yes, I'm not where I thought I would want to be. But the flip side of that is like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And for me, and I don't want to like rub this in your face at all, Bradley.
Yeah, of course. Well, you did win $1 million in front of billions of people.
Exactly. Like I have far exceeded any expectations, which my expectations were non-existent. So
of course they're exceeded. You could still be, you'd be working at a Starbucks and be like, this is more than I ever thought.
Well, but the thing is like, I always just like went through and like, because I was like, you know, just living to pay for dinner that night for myself to have fun with my friends. I was like, there's no way I will ever be able to afford a mortgage or anything. And I don't even care. And so now the fact that I can afford a mortgage and do all of those things, I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here.
Whoops. You're like, you just snuck in. Somehow you got past the bouncer and you're at the premier club. And you're like, I'm not even supposed to be here, bro.
But people can tell, right? People, it's like when you use points
Imposter
to sit in
syndrome.
first class.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you're
it's
like
so
sitting
good.
there and everybody's looking at you and you're like hoarding all the freebies from first class. And everybody's like, we can see because we don't hoard the freebies because we're here every week. And you're like, oh,
that's hilarious. I'll take 3 drinks. Have you guys seen these headphones they give you? It's unbelievable.
Can I
Look
have
how big
yours?
the
Are
screen is.
you taking your headphones? Can I have them? You already have them. I know. I'm getting more.
I'm taking 2.
Can I have that little
least.
bag? What's in the bag?
It's such a great bag.
Crappy socks, crappy eye mask, crappy earplugs, crappy chapstick, crappy toothpaste, and a
you leave the
one-time
airport
use.
and you get home and you're like, why did
I got 10 of
this?
these. I got 10 of these.
There's no point.
Yeah.
That's
So
good.
yeah, that's about how I feel. William.
Yeah.
Did
you
you
came
grow
with the
up?
question. I'm curious.
Yeah. Did you grow up just
No.
dreaming of being Denver's top underwater
number
photographer?
Number one.
I when I was younger, I wanted to be like a lot of things. Like, I mean, my parents probably should have sensed how ADHD I was when I was really young because I wanted to be an Egyptologist, a marine biologist, a professional beer keg lifter, a loan shark.
Wait, that's a job?
A loan shark. I want to break some legs.
Beer keg lifter. I saw something in Guinness Book of World Records about this guy lifting a beer keg like the most times or whatever it was. And I was like, damn, that's for me. Like professional beer keg lifter would be sick.
And you know
How
what?
old were you?
If you were my kid, I would cultivate that now. Like back then, they'd be like, get a life, kid. They don't have that in college. And now
It's called CrossFit now.
I'd be like, where's the beer keg classes? I'm looking online for beer keg classes. The city actually offers a summer program.
So yeah, I wanted to be a lot of things. I had a lot of interests. And that was when I was pretty young, you know, probably middle school or before middle school, elementary school. And I also had a lot of people who I kind of wanted to emulate, you know, like James Bond, Jacques Cousteau, Al Capone.
Michael
So
Jordan.
there was like
Al Capone, the leader of an
Al
absolute
Capone?
murderous squad of.
Because
That
of the
connects
loan
with the
shark.
loan
One day
shark. Yeah, exactly.
in middle school, I think it was seventh grade, we had like a day where it was dress like who you want to be in your future, like dressed like you know. And me and my friend dressed up like Al Capone, and we wore like suits, and we were trying to carry around baseball bats in school, but they wouldn't let us. We had
Yeah.
to give up the baseball bats.
Okay.
So there's like a lot of different things I want to do, but a lot of the other elements was, you know, Jacques Cousteau and marine biologist and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the ocean was always super important to me, but a big part of it was also just kind of wanting to, I mean, same thing as you guys too, as Bradley, like the notoriety. I always wanted some sort of notoriety. I didn't know if I wanted to be infamous like Al Capone or famous. But I also really loved like being funny, like, you know, making people laugh in school. And then I kind of got into like high school, and I really started to enjoy partying and having fun. And then for a while, I kind of just thought that I would want to seek happiness, you know, like
No, that's
and
stupid.
just do whatever I can. Yeah, it's the worst idea ever. Just kidding.
That's what I did my entire life. That was like from
Disappointments.
day to day. I was like, what's going to make me most happy tomorrow? Oh, I'll go to the pool in the morning. I'll get a McDonald's breakfast on my way there, and I'll just sit there and hang out with my friends all day long.
Yeah.
Kind of a good day, though.
So when I say that's stupid, I don't mean that. That's because that's all I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never had like a really defined idea of what I wanted to be, Bradley. I was more like kind of in between both of you. I knew there was things that I wanted to do, but I didn't know what they would be. And then I also really liked just having fun and trying to figure out how I could do that on a permanent basis. And then, you know, now where I am, I think it's not really something that I would have imagined in a lot of ways, being like more of an artist and a professional content creator and that kind of thing. I don't think I would have ever anticipated that, but I do think that the reason that I was able to do that and keep it, you know, why it was able to happen is because I had so many of these different interests and so many of these different things that I wanted to do. And because my parents were really supportive about like helping me figure those things out. I spent so much time in the library reading about sharks and reading about gangsters and reading about
I really think loan shark is the perfect combination for you.
Yes.
I'm seeing that clearer
Yes.
now than
Loan
earlier
shark,
when I laughed
okay.
at it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that I had a really loose idea of where I wanted to be when I was older. But then also my worldview definitely changed a ton because along with all these other things that I wanted to do when I was younger, I subconsciously or consciously, I don't really know, I definitely wanted to have a family like my parents. You know, I've got two sisters and my parents are still together. They've been together 40-something years. So I always thought that that was going to be definitely like a part of my future as well. And then I was on that path, and then, you know, I got divorced in May of this year. So that's been a huge, just like life-changing, mind-shattering kind of thing for me because it was something that I just never even imagined could happen. It was always like, okay, well, we'll have our family, we'll live happily ever after in Colorado, and everything will be fine. And then once that happened, it's kind of like making me rethink so many different things. And then I assumed that that would be the case, that I would have kids and a marriage and be happy. But it wasn't necessarily something that I consciously like put together and thought about. And then now that it's fallen apart, it's like, oh, well, was that even like really what I wanted in the first place? Or was that just what I thought I was supposed to do? And then now I'm just in the process of untangling all of that stuff and trying to figure out where I go from here.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a midlife crisis for sure.
I was.
Crisis 100%.
I haven't been divorced, and that's not a brag. I'm not bragging or trying to rub it in anybody's face here. How does that
Just have
feel?
$1 million and still married and
No, but like, what does it feel like? Is it just like a hard reset, and you have to just like come up with a new game plan for? Like, I can't even put myself in that position because I think it's one of those bridges you can't it's like having a kid. You can't comprehend having a kid until you have
Doesn't
a
matter
kid.
how much prepared you are, or how much you tell someone, or give advice. You've got to go through it.
Yeah, you've got to go through it, and it's a lot of. Sometimes you'll think you have a lot of clarity on it, and then the next moment you'll be completely confused again, and it's sometimes really liberating, and sometimes just really like sad and longing for a future that didn't end up happening. But I think in the end, there's a lot of ways that it's impossible to kind of grow as your true authentic self, depending on your relationship with somebody else. So I think that it's been pretty amazing just getting back to kind of those, dreams when I was a kid, loan shark, Egyptologist. I'm joking, but I'm also serious. Like, I'm really excited to go. Like, I was always so into seeing the pyramids and like all the Egyptian mythology and other mythologies. And I really forgot about all that stuff. So now I'm really trying to plan actual trips to go see these things that I used to be so passionate about that I probably wouldn't have ever done if I was still in it. So I don't know. There's no answer for it. It's super painful, but also really enlightening. And it's really weird.
It's when I think of that, I was just like, you can't, there's no, you couldn't talk to anybody who could prepare you for what that life altering moment will be. And it's similar.
And especially depending on your upbringing, like my parents were still together and most of my friends' parents were still together. So it's just didn't ever come into the equation that could really even happen.
Right.
Whereas if you were from a different sort of upbringing, it might be different. Like if you've been around a lot of a divorce in the past, then you might have a different way of looking at it before. But for somebody who's been with parents who are still together, and most of my friends are, it was just like, whoa, like, holy moly, like how did this even happen?
Well, because of that, with everybody that you knew kind of staying together, was there an amount of shame that came with that? Because I know growing up in Utah, there is shame in getting divorced, and I'm within family and stuff like that. Like it's not just like everybody wants to get involved. It seems like I know people have gotten divorced, and they're like, my parents are telling me to do this. Their in-laws are telling me to do this. Everybody's telling me to do this. I am embarrassed to talk about this. Like, was that also a factor at all?
I don't think
no?
Not really shame in terms of like societal shame or anything like that, because my family was not religious, and I don't think I've ever really looked down on divorce.
Yeah.
So it was more just like confusion and shock were probably the two biggest things.
Yeah.
Not really like, oh, I'm ashamed that my marriage fell apart. More like I'm confused that it fell apart, and I have no idea what to do now that it fell apart, because I just never planned for it. I never thought about it. I never anticipated it. Right. But I do really feel for people who are in a similar situation who also have that kind of shame, because I know that's really common. There's a lot of places where divorce is a really taboo subject. You just don't do it. So in some respects, I'm lucky that wasn't part of the equation. But yeah, other issues.
So my takeaway from this conversation is that we are a generation of should have been stand-up comedians. That seems like it was all kind of on our radar. It was all kind of on our radar.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
honestly, like that's like, and we didn't know. Like imagine if there had been stand-up comic classes everywhere, like improv comedy, all that stuff in every town in the U.S. There would be so many comedians at this point. We'd all just be a traveling herd of comedians.
Because when I was in school, it was like drama. Probably sure for you too, Bradley. It was like drama versus it wasn't like
sports.
It was versus sports. There was nothing like cool about acting or
no. The drama club
or drama
at my school was not super popular. Yeah. In fact, I played football and drama, and I had a rehearsal and I picked that instead of going to practice for state. Because I knew we were going to lose the first game anyway, but I still had to run like sprints until I threw up in football because the coach was like pissed at me for picking drama. But I was like, that was a big moment in my life where I was like, yeah, I'm not going anywhere for football. I'm not great at this, but I am at this, and I love this other thing, the performing side.
But speaking of shame, that was something that like did impact, because I probably would have went more down that route, but I was almost like,
I would have too.
to be in. I was Volvolia with yellow stockings and playing in middle school, and it was really embarrassing for me in a lot of ways, and because of like the societal shame about not being like a jock, I think that kind of made me not pursue that in a big way.
As a high school swimmer, I thanked God every day for the drama, because I knew I was not going to be the target like in the lunchroom. You know, I was like, thank God there's the drama kids, dude, because, you know, swimming.
Totally.
They're taking
when I'm shaving
shrapnel.
my entire body, they're taking all the heat still. Maybe I get it a little bit when I shave my legs and my head in the
you're wearing a Speedo, but no one's talking about it. No one's talking about Tyson. The drama kids are like, we're rehearsing Macbeth. Great. This is like a classy thing that's been done for thousands of years. Why aren't you talking to a hairless rat over here in the Speedo?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And you're just like, salute.
Yeah, see ya. Thank you. I'm a jock. Look at my Letterman jacket. That's way oversized.
That's hilarious.
So as we wrap, and very quickly, William, what would you say to yourself back then when you were bouncing around all these ideas, choosing to be a loan shark or an Egyptologist, two of the most prominent
such
jobs?
Classic picks.
Yeah. What would you say to yourself then? Now,
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have any advice. Like, I really love the path that I went down in terms of trying a lot of things, doing a little different thing, and then figuring it out. So probably the only advice would be just to pursue your passions. Don't let society impact what you want to do with your life, and just go for it.
Bradley?
Yeah, I think as I've gotten older, something that I've come to appreciate is the value of openness. And instead of just having like a real clear thinking of like, this is how it is, or this is how you do it, or this is what you should be, or whatever. The more people you meet, the more places you travel, you realize, oh, my version of how to raise a kid is different than yours, but we both want to be great parents, you know, or my version of how I should do this thing or whatever. And so, you know, I think there was a lot of times that I felt like I should have been better at something, should have been better at baseball, should have been better at acting.
Don't shit all over yourself.
That's exactly right. That's what you learn in improv, right? Is don't shit on yourself. And so I think that's so powerful. So I think I would just go back and I would say, like, I would tell Bradley, like, find your motivation, because you are enough. You're okay. You're fine. You don't need to prove anything to anybody. I think I had that sense in me. And as we all know, that is fairly cliche, but we all know that's such a powerful driver, but it never really leads to satisfaction, right? You never get to the place of like, oh, good, I had, you know, public approval. I feel great about myself. And so I think trying to like ask myself, like, what do you need to feel successful? What is your success? Because this won't lead to it. So what is that thing? So.
Yeah. And
I think that, love yourself, I think, is really good advice. I think I also would have gave myself that advice as a kid. Just love yourself.
Yeah. When you keep saying path, I think now at this age, and even looking back on my life, it was more of a fan than a single path. It was like I was dabbling in a lot of things. I was exploring a lot of things. I was keeping open, and I was shifting as things and interest in my life changed. Like, people are like, you weren't a pro cyclist for very long. I was like, I got very, very tired and very, very burned out. And so I just stopped without a plan in place, but I had made a huge network of people and moved into something else and went from that to that. And I think if I could go back though and tell myself something, it would be to be more direct with the things that I wanted to do. Because my parents put me in things and they were like, you're a swimmer. I was like, I don't love swimming. And they're like, well, you got to do it. And I was like, I wanted to play baseball. I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to play soccer. Yeah. And I did play those things, but only if I swam as well. And that just got to be too much stuff. And I don't fault people. I don't fault my parents for that or anything, but it's like, I should have, if I would have pursued the things that I really wanted to pursue a little bit harder, I probably would have been okay. But, you know, to all the midlife parents now, like, cultivate your
Yeah.
kids' interests and let them explore the things that they are really passionate about, because you know what? There's only one swimmer in the world that's made any money off of swimming, and he's not always happy. We see him in commercials of him.
True.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah,
anyways,
that's a good point.
That's it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We are the Midlife Crisisses, and we'll be back next week.
Yeah.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye, guys.